Hey, what's up guys? So today we're taking a look at a new sample that just dropped on our sample repository. This sample is called Essentials, and I'm very excited about this one because it's a collection of a lot of points that have been brought up by you, by the community, in hackathons, in Reddit, and all of these code will serve as a sandbox for also keep updating our documentation accordingly. But this is a first step to really filling some gaps that we noticed for development with spectacles. So you might actually appreciate this. You might appreciate a lot of these samples also if you come from a Unity background. The reason is there are a lot of things that I've been using a lot when I was using Unity. So I think this is really common knowledge that applies to every game engine if you are doing XR application. So let's take a look at this. The sample is subdivided in sections. And we had a lot of, let's go one by one. So this might be a little long, not too long, but a little long because I want to just take some time and explain how things work here. A lot of time in hackathons, people were asking how you access components. I know that in Unity it's simple as get component and then you just write the type. I know in Lens Studio is not that direct. Sometimes it's very similar, but you might not know out of the box. So you might go into the documentation, look for specific things. There is not maybe what you're finding. You get frustrated. So here we really have all of the possible examples here. And the examples are both in JavaScript and in TypeScript. Of course, this is almost all of the sample, almost all of the template that you're seeing now is being written in TypeScript and JavaScript, so to give you the two options. But here there is access component on child's, component on scene objects. So every time that you turn this on, you will see some logs that will tell you exactly what's happening under the hood. So here you say, for example, scene object is not null, scene object name, scene object has a render miss visual start event trigger. So meaning that it's been accessing to another component. This is very simple, but can save you actually a lot of time. And if you have any doubt, it's not documentation, so you don't even need to copy paste. You literally can just take a look at the example and literally see how it works. So in your project, this section is an augmentation of the access component section that we have on our documentation. In access component section, there is very simple examples, maybe too simple sometimes. So we will also update that. And here we have a lot of full examples that will guide you through everything with logs. So let's say we open up this one, you get these logs and it tells you what's the component, if there is also something that just runs on update. So it's something very similar to what you could do in scripts. So it gives you a good start. The second section is animations. So you might not know that we have an asset called LSTwin on our library. And there are the most common examples for scaling, for moving, for doing rotation, and all of them together. These 4 scripts are basically covering everything you need for doing animation via script. It's very simple. You can just look it up and see how it works and copy paste all of that setup. We also added one more script for the prefab instantiation twin. So this is a cool way to instantiate a prefab, which is something pretty common in a lot of applications. So we added it because it's a very common pattern. Then third and fourth section, very common question that we receive is how to hooking up buttons events and how to hook up button events and how to hook up gesture events. So you will see like that you need to turn them on. Don't forget, don't do like me. But this is just an example to hook up an instantiation of a button. Very simple. Again, this is going to save you a lot of time. If you don't know how to do it, you're just going to open the script and see it. We have the TypeScript and JavaScript version, TypeScript and JavaScript version also for gestures. And gestures, of course, I cannot test it in the editor, but we verify that works. Let's get into the more exciting stuff that we can actually check in the editor. If you are a Unity developer, you might know how important is instantiation. And of course, this applies also to Lens Studio and building XR application on spectacles. Instantiation is one of the most important things. So all of these topics that you see in this template are actually very important for XR. And the good thing about this is really platform agnostic. So this is just math, really. It's just geometry that you can apply to everything. So what are all of this? Well, let's take a look. So the first one is circle area instantiator. So this is basically instantiating prefabs into a circular area. This is something that you might use for utilities for your game or for something like you want to instantiate something on a space or doing something like that. This does everything on a wake, reach logs, and you can test everything and it's ready for you. Then we have circle perimeter instantiation. If you want to instantiate on a circle, if you want to instantiate on an arc, This is a slice, I believe. That means that it keeps you like the sliced circle, like a pizza. Instantiate along a line. Also, this is very important. Something very common pattern that you might need in some application. For example, you're creating a distance from one object to another one, and you say you want to instantiate something in the middle, or you want to instantiate something at 3/4 every line. Maybe you have your own path in Path Pioneer, and you want to instantiate along all of this spline. This is the way to do it. Or you want to populate an environment, things like that. Instantiate along line with fixed distance. So again, this is very similar, but we instantiate with a fixed distance. Then we have 2D grids, pretty common. Also this one, if you want to make grids, this is very big, the size of the prefab. So we might need to put smaller prefab to have a better understanding, but you get it. It's like a line. Let me see if we can augment the spacing. Let's do it 15. There you go. So we have a grid of our prefab. Of course, you can change prefab size, etc. You can customize things for your application. Instantiate on a 3D grid. Let's take a look. Very cool. You can create an environment in 2 seconds and see it in AR. It goes on. I'm not going to do them all, but you get the sense of what you can do here. These are very basic things that can apply to everything, and maybe can inspire you also for whatever application you can build. We also made a section called mini demos. So I'm not done, guys. It's going to take just a little bit longer if you're interested. Otherwise, just skip ahead and look at the other section. We have a section called mini demos. This is also a collection of really small applications that are very common across things that we saw around. For example, this one is an archery application, and it's going to work in this way. You're going to just load and release. Let's take a look if everything is turned on. Rotating. So if you need to get that target in the distance, maybe here, you just can do something like that. See if you're hitting it, so on and so on. And that's physical either. I need to reset it. But you get the hang of it. So these are basic things, but really they make a lot of difference, and this can straightforward a lot your development. This is changing every 30 seconds. It's just rotating or something like that. Then let's go to check out the Raycast over. So Raycast over, you just check if you are raycasting on this button or not. So if you're raycasting, it gets bigger. If it's not, it gets smaller. So this is raycasting on something, and to see the feedback. Raycast Painter, let's take a look. It's kind of like a painting with a tray line, so very simple setup, but it's ready for you to use if you want to do something specific. So on with this plane. Directional shadow is something that we actually released on a different template. Here we released it with a gist before, so this is just a way to have a directional shadow that can just show the way if you have your own PNG here and this is your object. We also have a video about how to set this up, but it's like a cool start to fake a shadow, basically based on not even light estimation, of course, but if let's say you move this object based on your light estimation rule, you might get a very nice effect. Or you might just keep it static there, matching your environment of the moment. Then we have Snap Saber. Guess what? This one here is simulation, very popular logic in games. So even here, ready for you to be tested, and really basic, but it gives you a good start. Previous and next, we always have a big request. How do we just create a menu that goes previous and next, and we show something when we go next to previous? Even this is done for you. Drone behavior. So we almost get into the land of the solver here, but basically the way some object could follow you around. Also this one, very common pattern. Let's get rid of this sphere that I created before. Drag and drop was this one. It's like something pretty common if I've been a lot of time in Hackathon. And dot product means this is actually a good way to keep things in your field of view. You notice that this gets red when I'm no longer facing it. So even this one, it's just a little rule that can really be helpful. I don't think it works when it doesn't work when you go up and down because I flattened it, but it just works when you are going left and right, and you can just change it based on your rules. Let's go to the next session. So physical collision. This is kind of an extract of another sample that we have that is called public speaker. How does it work? This is just basically a directional button. So you can see that when I enter from the upside, this goes down. So you can attach anything to that square and just have something like a surface that goes down when you press it, or anything else really. But also, again, this part is based on the get closest point online. You can see it, but only so If I'm outside, nothing happens. If I enter from the side, nothing happens. But if I just enter from the top, this will work with the closest point of line. So there is a line and we get the closest point. And this is called soft press controller. Then we have a simple raycast. Heard a lot of time, how do we do raycast? We have a little bit of a little example to how raycast from our point of view. So this one is raycasting on the collider that we have here. All right, and we also really did very simple and exposed. All of these scripts are very simple. You see ray start, ray end, and attachment. It's very straightforward. We really simplified things for you, so you don't have to get crazy and just go into the documentation. These things should be working outside of the box. All right, now we have a big, strong piece here. Runtime gizmos are being required a lot of time. Where are the other ones? I assume I'm missing some. Oh, here you go. Common request we have is like, how can we visualize stuff and debugging stuff? You might be used to something in Unity called Gizmos or debug Gizmos, but not the same thing. And I feel like it makes sense because the runtime is very different in Lens Studio. So debugging is a very different flow, and it should be because you build a lot often on device. So you might want to see stuff directly on device as a gizmo. That's my recommendation. So here we have very flexible shapes. We have a continuous polyline, a line, a circle, also spiral if you're interested, and a spline. So we have very basic stuff beside the spiral, which might be edge case, but we have something for you here to get started with, or runtime gizmos or debugging things. And also these are very simple. So line start, line end. You can set it up in 1 second and check out where the line is directing. Now here we have another things that we've been asked a lot of time, which is snapping. So snapping on a line or on a plane is something that is pretty common. So here we have an example. These are two separate examples. I'm running them both together, but this is a sample for the snapping on line and snapping on plane. I guess actually this is just a line. Oh, actually it is. Just try again. There you go. Now we're just doing plane, and now we're just doing line. Once again, I stress this one. The closest point on a line is actually very important. And you can simulate, you can't really modify it the way you want. But the thing is that, look at this now. So now it's not detecting. This is basically everything. When you enter into a collider, right, you have this condition. You're outside of the collider, nothing happened, you get in, and you can detect this sort of 0 to 1 press with your finger. This is very common pattern that can be applied to so many things. For example, we have an example, we want to like swipe pages, right? So you can do a swipe, and then when we get to 0.9, you can trigger your animation. And you can just let the user avoid to do it every time, so you only detect your hands when it's closer to the line. So you have this kind of check here. So this is very important in XR and gives you a lot of control and lets you avoid a lot of false positive. My big recommendation is to use this pattern for a lot of stuff. It's gonna let your users that you're using your application feel so much better inside of the application. Feel like, wow, this feels like very polished, and I'm doing everything right. I get it perfectly. So this was snap. And then we get into a very important part of XR, which is solver behaviors. Solvers are these behaviors where a collection of behaviors, spatial behaviors, which are very common pattern when you build your applications. It's regarding positioning, rotation, instantiation, and positioning. And it really defines also almost your style of how you want this application to be and feel like. It definitely depends from what you're trying to do. For example, if you need something that you're going to probably walk during your application and you want to attach some information that are very important to your face, to your head pose, you probably are going to use something like a Billboard and a Tether together. Or if you want something that is a little bit loose and something that is more based on distance and you want to attach things based on distance, you can also use something like more of scaling over distance and things like that. So even here, it's your buffet of behaviors, and you can just put them together like you want and do stuff. So this is very simple billboarding. So you're just billboarding at an object, but take a look, it's not going up or down, it's just rotating on the y-axis. So we are not really allowing too much. It's a very controlled behavior, and it's also very lerped. You notice how it's very smooth. So also that lerping is very important, which if you're not familiar with is linear interpolation, and it's just the way you interpolate a position to another one when you're moving things. This is a LookAt behavior. So this is continuously looking to my object here. This is matching the transfer. So this is with the lerp matching everything I do with an object with another one. This is something that you might not see as a behavior, let's say in the preview, but it's super important because let's say you want to do a swipe feature. How you're going to detect if you're swiping? So you can do it just seeing when the dot product is changing. So when the dot product is changing sign, meaning that you just change the direction. So in this case, you see that every time that I turn, I get an event in here. So this is a very interesting way to understand if the object that you are tracking is turning back and forth or left and right, and you can just like invoke some events from that. Then we have a scale with distance, also another very interesting behavior that usually is applied to UI panels to keep the same size of things based on your distance. In between rotation, it's another interesting behavior which allows you to, you have two objects and you have one in the middle, and the one basically that is red here is the mid rotation between these two objects. So the way it works, there is box 1, box 2, and then we have a rotation that is applied on one object, which is the red box, and then between these two objects, that gets rotation in the middle of these two. Then we have very classical behavior, which is called Tether. This is kind of same thing that you get when you are using SIK container frame. This is just placed in front of you, but it's placed in front of you with a delay, and that delay can be modified. Why this is important? Well, avoids a lot of stress to your eyes. That delay is very smooth and it makes you feel very good about seeing the content. For example, now I think that we have letter speed 5, but what if we put 1? This goes very slow. So you might just be inspired by this behavior, for example. Let's say you have an AI assistant, which is a little animal following you around. I've seen some application like that. You probably don't want it to be sticking in front of you. You want it almost like following you. So it's something like that is very nice and not invasive. Alright, this one we have a tether behavior, but it's slightly modified because it's recentering based on your difference of angle between this object and you. So you do something like that. This behavior, I've seen it around, is also called tag along, and it really, because it kind of follows you but not really. So it's something like that. Very common pattern also in XR. I've seen a lot of application which doesn't really need to recenter as long as you want it to recenter because you're just completely moving. Then we have something called distance events, which is a lot of distance events. Based on the distance from this object, something happens. So this is more something you see in the logs, but you see that based on our distance, we have something happening. So this is also something very common in XR. And let's say, for example, in your game, you're trying to get to a place and you want the user to be warned about, oh, you're 10 meters closer to this, or something like a notification. So you can do something like that. And the last but not least example is something we've been asked a lot, and it's the leaderboard. So this is a leaderboard example that populates automatically every 5 seconds. You will see how to use it and the patterns of this leaderboard. This leaderboard is making up names, of course, but it's kind of updating the scores every X time. So we can break it down in a way that is having a lot more granular methods in terms of managing your leaderboard. So this is the last example. We touched almost the 30 minutes with this video. Sorry it took quite a long time, but I really wanted to show you what's possible, and I hope you appreciate the fact that this is already for you, and I hope it inspires you to put together your application. Thank you so much, and have